I don't know, this is how I do it. They say Denecke.
When they spell it?
Like when someone needs to write it.
Oh.
And I say Denecke.
I didn't hear a difference besides your tone.
It's like the first 4 letters and then the last 3, or the like 3 and then 2 and 2.
Okay. Because they think it just out of habit, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I just noticed it one time.
Well, anyway, I started recording, so it's pretty casual.
Great.
So I've got Julienne Denecke here, or Denecke, depending on who you ask.
Denecke.
And we are classmates in the MBA 2025 program. And we have her here today because she has a very interesting career. But maybe let's first kick it off with what have we been doing in class? Maybe some of the classes we've taken, some surprises.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. Excited to be here. So this week is term 1, block 1, which is, I guess, the beginning of like our formal classes. We did have one class that we already did, which we did in August and was actually offsite. So this is our first like on campus, which has been really fun to be here with all the other Haas students with like evenings and weekend and undergrad. And actually on Friday, there was the 125th anniversary of Berkeley, and there was a event at Haas. So we got to attend that and see some of the alumni, which was really nice. And then we went straight into classes on Thursday. And definitely the schedule is pretty rigorous. I think we knew that going in, but we have basically 3 blocks of 3 classes each day. And right now we're doing financial accounting, managerial economics, data and decisions, and then also building trust-based relationships. So it is packed.
Yeah, and it's a little confusing because some of the classes material feel very similar. So when we've got the list of all the requirements, all the readings and homework, it's like, oh, wait, which class was that for again? At least I'm struggling with that. The other thing that surprised me about the anniversary party with the full-timers, it's like I can't tell between the full-timers or if they're undergrad. I feel like as a class where we probably stand out, the average age is 40 years old in our class. And it's kind of weird just being back in the university setting. I don't know if you've
thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I definitely was looking for my classmates for sure. And I do think, I don't know. I feel like I just recognized them because I was like seeking them out. I think it's interesting. I actually have a lot of friends who've done the evening and weekend program. And I have a lot of friends, I guess maybe less who've done the full-time program, but a lot of people have done the evenings and weekend and also the executive. So it felt honestly pretty normal to me. I think the evening and weekend tends to be a little younger, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't recognize like a stark contrast.
That's fair.
I actually have a coworker who's in the evening and weekend, like in one of my teams, like directly adjacent to me. So
did you guys have any conversations about like which one's better? Like
we did talk about it. Well, I mean, I think I knew pretty strongly that I wanted to do the executive program, and he felt more like he wanted to do evenings and weekend. I can talk about why I want to do the program.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, I guess I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but I have like a military and government background, and now I work at a public company that is corporate, and there are certain things that I've kind of learned or had to kind of like learn on the job, and I don't feel like I have a great framework for a lot of stuff, especially when I'm arguing with our finance partners. And so I know that I want to lead bigger teams. I think I want to kind of, climb the corporate ladder, so to speak. And so like executive management is what I was focused on. For my coworker, Khan, he is a product manager, and I think he's maybe looking to like pivot out of that a little bit. And so I think for him, the evenings and weekend was a lot better. Also, when I talked to his boss, I was like, oh, Khan's in the program. And he was like, oh, no, I had no idea. So I think he's also doing it a little more kind of like under the radar. And with the 3-year time frame, you have more flexibility to do that. I was like, I have a demanding job. I know what I want to get out of this. I want to get it done like quickly. And so I think the executive program was like the best option for me.
Yeah, for me, I think the evening weekend, you can either do Saturday every week for 3 years with some summers, right, with breaks, or you do a Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, twice a week in the evenings. And like I travel quite a bit for work. I'm sure you travel more than me. I don't know how anybody with a job that's not purely stationary would do that, right? As far as the corporate or the big company you work at, should we refer to it as a up and coming EV company, or are you open about
Small EV company? I'm open to talk about it, I guess. I work at a small EV company called Tesla. Do you want me to talk about my career history?
Let's do. Why don't you do current role and what you kind of a gist of what you do first, and then we'll bring it back to how you got there.
Sure. So my current position is senior manager for logistics for North America. So I manage a team of about 100 folks, and we bring parts in from our suppliers to all of our factories across the U.S. right now. So primarily our biggest productions in Fremont, where we make S and X and 3 and Y. We also manage everything for Nevada, where we make a lot of our energy products. And then recently we have Texas as well, where we're making the Model Y, and then we have Cybertruck coming very soon. So it's pretty complex. Like the parts obviously come from all over the place. And my team manages all of that inbound, even for stuff that's coming from like China or other regions. So we handle everything from like air to ocean to rail. And yeah, I find it really fascinating.
Yeah, and from our conversations in the past, it sounds like your job's pretty demanding. Like you were joking, like I don't know how they're going to survive while I'm in class, right? So can you talk maybe a little bit about the day-to-day requirements, like what whose hair is on fire and why?
Yeah, I mean, so I do work in operations. I think maybe there's like some roles that are not as critical, and production for Tesla is generally 24/7. We don't really tend to have downtime. So whenever there could be some kind of urgency, which still happens quite often, me or someone on my team would potentially be brought into that. If the urgency is something coming from like Mexico or maybe China, like we might have to do some very expensive air freight, which could be possibly like up to $1 million or more dollars. So when it gets into those like really high urgencies and high dollar amounts, that's when I'm generally looped in. Of course, we try to avoid that, and our expedites are coming out quite a lot. But we did just have, again, a big build plan change. And as a result of that, those expedites kind of like come and go. So it kind of ebbs and flows, I guess. This past week was just a little rough. So that's why I was concerned about how they're managing things. But I did also start a 24/7 operations center recently. And that's been a great help. Now at least I know if I do get something, even if I'm here, I get a phone call, I can say like, hey, Ops Center, you can take this up, and they will do that now. So it's been kind of like a game changer for a lot of the folks on my team.
Little technical error there, but where we left off, I think you were talking about the mission or critical operations center. What did you call it?
Oh yeah, 24/7 operations center.
Yeah. I joke that like operations is quite literally the last thing I would want to do, because like there's no breaks, right? Especially when it's manufacturing, something like manufacturing. There's no unless you set up some contingencies, you're on the hook, and if you're in charge, there's nobody else to blame. So
I view that as like a challenge though, because I want to get to a point where we are stable and where I do have contingencies. And that's kind of like my goal in like building and developing this team and building this, new team within my larger group, is to really like look at what the need is, define that, fulfill it, and then get to some point where we don't have these types of escalations in the future. So I think I'm about like 60% complete.
That's awesome. I think the biggest question that some audience members might have, if they're a ambitious professional, young professional, how did you qualify for a position like this? So maybe you've got a really interesting background, very similar to my background. It's kind of why we got along so quickly. Maybe start from as early as you want and talk about where you started your career and how you ended up where you are now.
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking about qualifications. We actually did a survey as one of our classes for this week where it talked about if we were qualified, and we had to rank ourselves, and then we had several folks who we work with who ranked us, and actually the people who ranked me more qualified than I ranked myself, and I found that really interesting because I think maybe I have a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I don't always feel like I am the most qualified, even though I do have, I think, a good amount of experience at this point. Anyways, I guess going very far back, I studied political science in undergrad. I did ROTC. Both my parents are military officers, Army officers. And they, recommended doing ROTC to help pay for college. And then I wasn't too sure exactly what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to work in government. They're like, this will be a great path for you. And actually it was my dad who encouraged me to apply for a branch in logistics. And at the time that didn't really sound that interesting to me. I wanted to be a diplomat or do military intelligence. He was like, I think you would be good at this because it requires a lot of planning and organization, and you get to see a lot of the kind of like the fruits of your labor very quickly. And I think you enjoy all of those things. So I definitely commend my father for acknowledging that about me.
He saw this at the ripe age of 16 or something.
Yeah, I think at that point I was like maybe 20 because I was about to go into the military and we were picking our branches. So
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a little bit more agency in making plans for yourself. I mean, I guess the question is like, what kind of childhood was it like where you demonstrated some planning abilities, leadership style? I don't know.
Well, I am the oldest of three. I'm the big sister, so I'm the boss. Self-appointed.
It all makes sense now.
Yeah. I guess so. So my dad recommended that. He also recommended it because it's a really good branch for women. There's opportunities all over the world. He was like, you can be stationed anywhere. At that time, the Army was not integrated in all combat branches, so women actually were only allowed to serve in certain functions, which logistics was one of those. But he was like, in those units you'll be in, it'll be more of a split. Like a lot more women will be there. You'll probably, have some comfortability, have some mentors, have some folks who can like help you along. And I think that was also some really great insight and foresight. I commissioned in 2010. I did get to go to airborne school while I was in college, and then I got to go to parachute rigger school also through my training. So I'm a quartermaster officer, which basically is kind of like supply, but I worked all over the world. I was in Fort Lewis, Washington. I did a training operation in Singapore. I was in Kuwait and Qatar for about 15 months in a variety of different functions. I actually was a maintenance platoon leader. I managed a unit of riggers who were supporting a cavalry squadron. In Qatar and Qatar, I managed helped manage a forward stocking location where we would deploy material all over the Middle East. So I feel like, I think supply chain doesn't sound that fun or sexy maybe, but there are a lot of kind of like cool opportunities within the branch.
In Kuwait, were you staying in Zone 6 or Zone 2?
Oh my gosh, I blocked that out.
Did you have to take a bus to the office?
Yeah, like a small shuttle, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's like Zone 6 is a little further out in the boonies, where some lower ranking folks stay. So it was like kind of nice to get away from the flagpole.
Yeah.
But also it was kind of like a weird commute. Like I think I ended up walking most of the time. To be like a 25-minute walk.
Yeah. In like 115 degree weather.
I think the biggest thing for me, like somebody had told me this word for word, but the way I describe it is getting off the plane in Kuwait is as if somebody turned on a hairdryer on your on your eyeballs and just never turned it off the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was mostly in Qatar actually. Our brigade headquarters was in Kuwait, so I was mostly in Camp Asaleya.
Okay.
In Qatar. Yeah.
Cool.
So I was in the military, active duty, about 5 years. I did enjoy it. I think it was a great recommendation by my parents. Don't tell them I said that. I learned a lot. But I also felt like I was a little limited. I felt like I knew what my path was if I stayed in the military. I'd also got to witness my parents go through that path. And I kind of just wanted to see what else was out there. So I got out of the military, knowing that I wanted to get out, but not knowing what I wanted to do.
Was it difficult? Well, one, making the decision, was it difficult? And two, breaking the news to family and colleagues.
I think it definitely was a difficult decision. My parents, who are both very smart people, were like, what are you going to do? How are you going to support yourself? How are you going to retire? Like, how are you going to save money? I was like, how do other people do this? I don't know. And actually there is kind of a culture in the military where when you say you're getting out, you're kind of considered like, I don't know, persona non grata. It's like, oh, well, you're like giving up on us. And so I actually do kind of like stigmatize you a little bit and make it a little difficult to get out in some cases. But I was pretty resolute at that point. I just wanted to try new things.
Was there a critical influence, like a decision point? Or it was kind of like just life leading you away? It's like a general feeling.
That's a good question.
I guess I asked because, plenty of other officers at the 5 to 7 year mark are probably in a position where they're like, do I stay or get out? And I was in the reserve for 10 years, and that decision was easier. But for active duty, it's your whole life is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've been moving around for your career, for missions, but also your duty stations change every 3 years. How did you take the leap?
Yeah, for me too, and I think it's true, but like I was born into the military. Like my parents were Army officers. I was born on a military base in Biloxi, Mississippi. I got out of the military when I was 27. And so I feel like I kind of spent 27 years in the military. It is a good question. I'm really kind of struggling for like a great answer. I like felt resolute that there like had to be more out there. Something for me, it's like on all of my ratings, like I would get really good, performance reviews. And I was like, okay, so does that mean I can like move up faster, or can I go do this other thing? And the answer was always no. And it felt really daunting for me because I'd recently been promoted to captain, and captain is a rank you at that time stayed in for about like 7 years. I was like, wow, I can't imagine doing this actually for 7 years without the opportunity to like advance more quickly. And so I think that maybe was like the biggest point where I was like, I think I need to go now.
We could probably gripe about military career paths for a while. For the sake of brevity, how about we move on to, getting a job out of the military into where you are now?
Yeah. So yeah, again, I got out not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I would get a master's, potentially in like public policy. I looked at like Johns Hopkins and stuff in DC. I think I also, I'm really close with my family. I think because we moved around so much, we're very close. I wanted to like be back in DC where I'm from and get to spend time with them again. So I went back to DC and I kind of just started looking around, like what my options were. I knew I needed a job, even if I was going to do school maybe later on. And again, my father, he was like, hey, there's like a military officers association job fair. Why don't you go to that? Just start like networking, looking around. And I actually did find a job there. So I work for a small consulting group called Schaefer Corporation, and I actually ended up being on site at an agency called DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which if you haven't heard of DARPA, a lot of people haven't, but they're actually attributed with inventing things like the internet, GPS,
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Wi-Fi. It actually is a really cool research institute, and one of the kind of like principles of DARPA is that they don't do anything that's like iterative. Like they will only do absolutely brand new technology. So once something is invented, if there's an ongoing project about it, it will just like cease.
And what was your role at DARPA?
So there I was basically working as a consultant for the tactical technology office. So we supported all of the program managers there kind of with like developing strategy and making sure that they were on track with their programs and their budgets. And it was interesting. One of the program managers that I supported there, so I was in the tactical technology, which was kind of more like land, air, sea, and actually space. So one of the PMs actually knew Elon Musk and was working on a reusable rocket program. And so actually when SpaceX reused their first rocket, the program that the PM was working on at DARPA was terminated because Elon was able to do it in private industry.
And then next, did you move right into was that your network contact, or how did
it actually wasn't? So while I was in DC working at DARPA, I was volunteering for some non-for-profits that were helping women in the military, and I was volunteering with one of these groups, and another group actually approached us. They were starting a company called Vet Tech Trek, where they wanted to kind of like introduce veterans to tech. And their intent was that it would eventually become kind of like a matching platform that could, be more broad than just for veterans, but like more of like a skills translation. And they were like, hey, do you want to come on a trek first? And so I actually went on a trek with them to New York, and we went to like Facebook and Twitter and, all these companies I'd never been to before, and felt totally like unapproachable and unattainable. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I loved the trek. I felt like super invigorated by it. And then these guys were like, hey, we're actually going to start this as a company in San Francisco. And like, would you be interested to come and like work as a program manager for us? So I moved to San Francisco with like 2 suitcases on like a short-term contract because they didn't know how much funding they would have or, how long that would last. I think it was like initially like for 3 months, 2 suitcases, 3 months. And the company is actually now called shift.org. And I was there for about a year. I guess kind of like as all startups do, they had a bit of like a pivot. And so they work a bit more in like job placement now, which was like a little different than what I was interested in. And through a friend at that company, I kind of just started looking around like sort of casually. They referred me at Tesla and I got an interview very quickly, and then I was actually hired very quickly. And I wanted to have more like ownership of something. I think I actually kind of missed, the supply chain aspect from the military. So I was really excited about this. I never thought, Tesla would even consider me. I don't even think I would have applied if I wasn't referred. Again, the imposter syndrome, the like, I don't belong here maybe. And yeah, at this point, I just had my 5-year anniversary at Tesla.
That's awesome. I think people in a similar position where you were over 5 years ago could never see themselves transitioning into a FANG company or something in big tech.
T-Fang.
Or I think it's Manga now because Meta went to that.
Oh, yeah.
But you didn't just sit back with your senior manager title at Tesla. You're in this executive MBA program at the top 10 MBA program in the country. How did you decide to do it, and what are you looking to get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked maybe a little bit about it, but I feel like there is like a bit of a gap, for me at least. Like, so at Tesla, I started as a manager. I built a team, that went pretty well. I got more scope. I built another team. Then, I was like, I should be promoted. So I got promoted. I was like, there's a lot of scope. Like, what's going on here? So then, I got promoted to senior manager, and I started building another team. And I just felt like I was kind of like repeating a lot of what I was doing. I was doing it successfully. And I kind of wanted to understand, like, what could a different approach be to do this? Like, I think I use actually a lot of what I learned from the military with like the structure and team building. But I was like, I'm with all these other people around me and they're certainly doing this some different way. And I think I could probably build upon like, what I already know, with skills that I think an executive program could help me obtain. So that was definitely one. And then I think number two is like I'm always looking to kind of expand my network. I think maybe, the older you get, the more kind of wisdom you have. But I think recognizing now that I kind of like felt that imposter, persona before, I think now the more knowledge that I have and the more folks that I know, that the less that seems to be there, at least for me. So I'm definitely working on the network expansion as well.
Yeah, I think the first orientation where we had to step up in front of the 75 impressive individuals.
Oh God, what did I say?
I mean, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. Like, when I got up, my heart was pounding. I was like, this is the first impression and I'm going to screw it up, right? And then we go into our leadership communication immersion and like really get to know each other. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not an imposter. Like, I'm not being ostracized or looked down upon. It's like I'm helping people as much as they're helping me. And then we start studying for class and I'm like, oh my God, these people are so smart. And they're so studious and organized. Like they're such a talent, I think. Not even just from the leadership perspective, but these people are just incredibly bright. With that being said, post graduation or even in the program, what are you hoping to get out?
Good question. No, I mean, I think I've like noticed the same things for sure. And honestly, like I've looked at other MBA programs in the past and none of them have really resonated with me as much as Haas in general. I mean, I think from the first like admissions event that I went to like the defining leadership principles, like this really felt like an environment where I could be successful. Again, like being a little uncertain of what I know. I haven't been in school in a long time. I like immediately felt like this was like a community, and the people around me were gonna help me succeed just as much as like I would for them. So I think that was an assumption coming in, but that's definitely proving to be true. I feel like I've already met people who will be friends for the rest of my life, and I will continue to like learn from them. Not Edward. So yeah, I think generally like learning from these folks, supporting them, and kind of like expanding my community, even like here in the Bay Area, are things that I'm looking forward to getting out of the program.
Any like pie in the sky dream, like start a business, move up, become a director?
If
not, it's fine too.
Yeah, no, I actually, I feel like I'm in like a really good place because I do feel really secure in my job. I do want to get promoted to director, hopefully within the span of the program. But I think because like I like my boss, I like my job, I'm here to like learn and build skills. I don't feel like a pressure to like find a job, which I do think even for like the full-time MBAs is really stressful, to try to constantly be like defining yourself and redefining yourself and branding yourself. And I can understand, the value of that, but I think that would be really difficult to do while you're going through a program and working. So I feel fortunate that I think I have the opportunity to like explore anything I want because I have this kind of like path that I think I'm already on, which means I could totally deviate and go in like some other complete direction because I'm very like open.
Yeah, I think for me personally, sometimes people are like, oh, how did you become a product manager in tech or something? And I honestly tell them like my advice isn't very applicable. It's like the opportunities kind of just come up and you take it when you recognized that opportunity. We talked about a lot, and I think we're over 30 minutes at this point. Kind of to summarize, military background, transitioned into tech, looking to be more of a badass by taking this MBA program, with goals that we'll see what happens, I guess. Maybe last thing to close out, favorite thing about the program.
Favorite thing about the program, that's an interesting one. I feel like it's still so new. I mean, honestly, I think the people are just like fantastic, and I still don't even think I've really had like a real conversation with every one of them. So I really am just like so excited to get to know all of my classmates a lot better.
And then part 2 to that, whose episode would you want to look forward to the most, or who do you look forward to the most?
Oh, that's a good question also. I don't know. I kind of want you to interview Stephanie Weinstein because she's like the most humble, most like intelligent, accomplished person I feel like I've met, and I think you could get some good info out of her.